Alright, so this is my video review for the movie Whiplash. So the first thing I want to talk about is the significance of blood, sweat, and tears in the film. Tears not so much, but it did show one time when the teacher was yelling at Andrew, he did shed a tear. So I thought that was important to know the trio there as far as representation of all the hard work he did to get to where he was at the end of the film. I think um, that was a very understood part of symbolism in that film. I don't think that was very confusing to understand, but I thought it was important to show his progression and how hard he worked in order to get where he ended up being at the end. But that was the first thing I wanted to point out. Second thing that I wanted to mention was it was interesting how the only people, with the exception of I think he was a saxophone player in the movie, the only people he got angry at were the drummers, pretty much. And I found this to be interesting because later on in the film, he said that he never had a player that ended up being like one of those professional players that like he had mentioned like later on in the movie, like one of those people that had gone off to be really big. He never had one of those, and the way he was teaching was so that he can become like he can actually teach someone to be that good and that well known. And I found this interesting because if that was the case and he had never had anybody like that, then why was he only yelling at the drummers? If that was the case, and then he would have yelled at all the other students too, but he didn't, which shows that they're probably just as good as he wants them to be. So does he not have love for those students too? Does he not care? Does he only care about the drummers and making them great? Um, because if that was the case, then um, that would have a whole different meaning to the movie. But I just didn't understand why he wasn't yelling at the other students too, because then if he wasn't yelling and he meant what he said before, then all those students would have been great and he would have been lying the entire time about that. So that was something I pointed out that I caught in the movie and that I thought was interesting. The other thing was the car. There was huge significance to the car as far as the movie is concerned, because he said that the teacher said that one of his old students had died in a car crash, and this is probably the only area of the movie where the teacher, Fletcher, I think his name was, showed any kind of emotion whatsoever in the film. And I thought it was very significant because then, well, the student that he had taught died in a car crash, according to him. We find out later that he committed suicide instead of dying in the car crash. But it's significant because later on, Andrew gets into a car crash, and even though the teacher doesn't know that that's what happens at the moment, he shows no sympathy for him when he gets back into the concert area, and he tells him that he's done, and he kicks him off the team. That's when he attacks the teacher, and Andrew gets kicked out of the school. So it's really interesting to see whether the teacher is only showing love for the other guy because he became great. But then again, is he great because the teacher went on later in the movie to say, "Oh, I've never taught anyone to really be great." So I thought that was interesting. And also, going back to the whole car situation, um, that brings about a lot of weird endings that I wanted to point out. The car was one of them so he gets hit by the semi and he just runs off. Nothing does it explain at the movie that he was running away from an accident. Nothing explained how if he was getting chased by the police for doing something illegal. I was expecting later on in the movie for there to be a scene where he had some sort of issue because he actually broke the law in that sense, and it would have brought another subplot to the movie. I was expecting that. That did not come about. So that was something that was kind of left open in the air for me. Another thing was the girl and the relationship. As Dr. Hammer in our class would say, one of the typical archetypes is boy likes girl, boy gets girl, boy does something stupid, loses girl, and boy does something heroic, gets girl back. That wasn't the case in this film. Everything except boy gets girl back, because you see him on the phone trying to get the girl back. The girl has a boyfriend, and then you don't even know if the girl ends up going to the concert or not. But I was expecting, oh, girl's gonna go to the concert. Girl's gonna realize how much of a success this guy is and how hard he works. She's gonna give him another chance. They're gonna get back together. That's what I was expecting. That didn't obviously happen. And the last ending that I wanted to point out was the whole thing about the teacher. Um, and that, so they're all buddy buddy again at the end when they're both trying to sabotage each other. That made no sense to me whatsoever. Um, I hated the teacher at the end of the movie. Is when I really, I hated him the entire movie, but I really despised him at the end. And I wanted Andrew to really show him off in front of the entire crowd of people watching that. I didn't want them to become friends again or anything like that. That was kind of disappointing, but I guess the movie did its point in at the end showing that Andrew did become like this like amazing drummer that this teacher really wanted to teach someone successful, and he eventually did. So it did its point in that, but as far as the car, the girlfriend, and the relationship between the teacher and the student, those are things I was a little upset with how it ended. But overall, the movie wasn't bad. I'd probably give it another 7.5 out of 10, something like that. But thanks for watching.